I hate the news. If it's not coronavirus, it's other diseases, like blatant fucking racism. There is no need to see more video. There is no need to wait to see how it plays out. There is no need to put a knee on someone's neck for 9 minutes. There is a need to do something. If you wear a badge and you don't have an issue with this, turn it in. George Floyd died on the ground under the knee of a Minneapolis police officer. No police protocols recommend kneeling on a human being's neck until he passes out. I trust a thorough and complete investigation will take place. Our law enforcement profession must do better. I know plenty of amazing and selfless police officers, but where are they when things like this happen? Their silence is alarming. The standard for people in power is to condemn the actions of those that didn't align with your mission and values. We don't see it enough. So, a couple days ago, a man by the name of George Floyd was, I guess you can say in this case, murdered by a police officer who, for some reason, detained the guy. I don't know the reason he was being arrested or detained. He was just put in handcuffs. He didn't do anything harmless. He wasn't armed, and he seemed to be cooperating. And the police officer just put his knee on the guy's neck for 9 minutes straight while George Floyd pleaded for oxygen because he couldn't breathe, and the cop didn't listen, and now George Floyd is dead. And yes, he was a person of color, which is, bringing back the whole, Black Lives Matter thing, and I definitely understand where they're coming from. These cops deserve to be punished. They got fired, but I think there needs to be more of a hefty punishment, like I said, because the cop who did it should be, getting life in prison for murder, and the other 3 officers that were involved at least should be getting some sort of punishment, years in prison, because they were basically an accessory to this murder in this case. And, like I said, I got a couple police officers in the family. I respect, the police and whatnot, but I do understand that there are cops like this out here that will abuse their power and think they can do anything because they're a police officer, and that means if you touch them, then they can basically take you on the ground and just beat the shit out of you. When there's other cops who understand the rules and regulations and are just doing what they do to protect others, and when you get cops like this, obviously it's going to stereotype them, and people are going to think that all cops are this way. That's not the case, but I still do understand that there are cops that are like that out in the world. I'm not sitting here saying there isn't. There definitely is. And in this case, it's one of those things. It really is, where you just have to think, like, what went down, what happened, and either way, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the guy who caught this on camera is kind of like, people are 50-50, like, they're like, well, he got it all on tape, so at least there's that proof that the cop did what he did, so they can't really take the cop's side in this situation. And other people are saying, well, instead of filming, he should have did something and went after the cop. But my only rebuttal with that would be, if he wasn't filming and then attacked the cop, then the cop could say, well, he attacked me while I was making an arrest, and of course people are going to take the cop's side, and that has nothing to do with a color thing. It's just, if you attack a police officer, obviously you're going to get in trouble, but the fact that even if you're protecting somebody, if you don't have it on camera, then obviously, once again, they're going to believe the police officer, because to some police officers, they can't do wrong and will not do wrong, and it's sad to think that some police officers, get off more than, a regular human being. And I do love the support that George Floyd has been getting for many people, realizing that this is, definitely a problem and whatnot. And I did this on my sports channel, bringing up the whole Kaepernick thing. I get what he did may have been a little bit disrespectful, but first of all, there is nothing for the national anthem at all that says you must stand. So in the end, it's just kind of like, that is what it is. And he was peacefully protesting because of the violence like this that was going on against minorities and police officers. And now people in Minnesota, which is where this took place, they call it a violent protest, but that just kind of contradicts itself, because if it's violent, then it's not a protest, then it's just a riot, and more people are getting hurt, and another person was killed during these riots and whatever, and they said masked intruders, but I'm like, do you realize that pretty much everybody in the world when they go out is masked at this point in time? So that's kind of irrelevant to the situation. But, you know, and now all of a sudden Minnesota's become this riot fest, and I don't get it. They're like, we're just protesting, but yet they're throwing rocks at businesses, looting and whatnot, and shooting and stabbing, and I'm just like, that's not protesting. Protesting is going out there with signs in front of a building or something, or, you know, doing what Martin Luther King did, where he would go to these rallies and whatnot, and they would, you know, peacefully say what they have to say and whatever. That's a protest. And what Colin Kaepernick did was a protest for this right reason. He was not hurting anybody. He was not murdering anybody. He was just being like, hey, there's a problem that I'm trying to point out here in this situation, and if America really talks about it, oh, we're the land of the free, the home of the brave, we're this equal country, but yet there's still racism in America, and he tried to point that out, and everybody took it as, oh, he's un-American because he did what he did. But in the same point in time, is America really America at this point in time? Because there's still a lot of stuff going on that people don't know about. I mean, you can't tell me racism is not still a problem nowadays. Sure, yes, people of color have, you know, pretty much the same rights as everybody else now, whereas back then they had no rights at all. But I just still see people out there, there's still the KKK still a thing. People forget about that. I mean, those are the biggest racists out there. No matter what they do, whether it's nonviolent or violent, they're racist people. That's what the KKK is for. And you get other states that are just so, you know, not necessarily against minorities, but there's definitely that biased against them and whatever. And it's like when Barack Obama became president. Whether you like him or hate him, there was that whole thing of like, how can a black man run this country? And in my head I'm like, are you serious? Like, how can a black man run this country? Well, if he's American, which he is, and, you know, is of the certain age to run for president, then he can run for president. Plus, just be, I mean, people make it out like he was unintelligent or something just because of the color of his skin. People did the same thing with Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson, if I may get back into sports for a little bit. The 4 quarterbacks taken before him were all white, and everybody was like, oh, these guys are going to have, you know, storied careers and all this stuff, and Lamar Jackson gets picked last in the first round of the draft, the last of the 5 quarterbacks to go in the first round of 2018, and people are like, he's not intelligent enough, he only knows how to run the ball, this and that and the other. So what does he do? First 2 years, Ravens win their division. They finish with the best record in the NFL last year. And Lamar Jackson becomes the second player ever to win MVP unanimously, which means he got 100% of the vote. And all the other quarterbacks, the only one that's kind of come close to Jackson is Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills, whereas the other 3 aren't really doing all that spectacular right now. And you just kind of look and go, huh. And a lot of these sportscasters have come out and said, you know, I'm sorry, I looked at it the old-fashioned way, where if you are this, you know, white quarterback who isn't mobile, then you're the better quarterback in this case. And they were like, I was wrong about that and Lamar Jackson and whatnot. So there is still blatant disrespect like that against people of color. And it does disgust me sometimes. And this is a situation where people will say, oh, I don't think it's racist, this happens to white people too, this and that and the other. I get it, but when you look at it in the standpoint is when, you know, a white police officer attacks a black man, what do you expect it to be? You know, other than, hey, this white police officer attacked this black man, obviously some racism was brought into it. And I'm not going to sit here and say this cop was or wasn't. To me, this cop just happened to arrest this guy, detain him, like I said, whatever. I don't know what was going on. This guy could have had a warrant out for his arrest, but that didn't, you know, mean the cop had to do what he did and abuse his power like that, and the other cops just kind of sat back and watched while this guy was basically suffocating to death and whatnot. It's one of those tough situations, it really is, but at the same point in time, I understand where people are coming from, and it does disgust me that yet another life had to be taken like this. A guy who, once again, I don't know if he was innocent or not, but an unarmed man who was abiding to what the police officer said, wasn't fighting, wasn't resisting, and that happened to him for 9 minutes. The guy was literally choking. He had no oxygen whatsoever, and he pleaded to the cop with what little oxygen he had, "I can't breathe." And the cop just kept telling him to shut up or just didn't listen to him because frankly he didn't care. He felt like, oh, my day's going boring. I need to like stop a criminal, or I need to pick somebody out of the crowd and act like they were doing something bad. Like I said, don't know that side of the story. But even if he was, like I said, had a warrant out for his arrest or something, didn't give that cop the right to do what he did. And now all of a sudden you're looking at a case that could potentially go from, oh, it's, not only is it abusing power and whatnot, but it's also a murder because, this guy was murdered. There is no other way to put it in this case. And, it's just, it's all over the place. And there is one story I want to point out just to show you that, cops don't get the respect that they deserve. Because, yes, this cop did what he did, and that's, bad, but in Baltimore County, a couple of days ago, a black police officer was shot and killed. And yet, you don't see that on the nationwide news, or you don't see that on the news around Baltimore. So it just goes to show you that there are good police officers out there. This police officer that was shot and killed was just out doing his job and protecting, the people of Baltimore. And somebody just, I guess, got fed up, or maybe he was trying to catch the guy doing something and the guy pulled out his gun and shot the cop dead. So just know there are cops out there that do their job correctly and that really care about the people and don't discriminate. And we just have to show them more respect. Every time I see these other videos of like, oh, this cop discriminated me, it's always when a person of color, or it's not even a person of color, I'll say this, I just see videos all over the place of anybody of any color, any ethnicity gets pulled over, and they give the cop attitude, like, why are you pulling me over? You can't do that, like this and that. And I'm just like, if you cooperate with the police, right, everything will go a whole lot easier. Just give them your license. If you know you've done nothing wrong, you don't have a warrant out for your arrest or anything, give them your license. They'll do whatever they do in their little cop car, and then they'll come back and be like, okay, you're clean. If you give them an attitude, then obviously they're going to be a little suspicious, or they're going to take it as like, oh, this guy wants to get belligerent, say this and do this, when all I'm doing is a simple traffic stop. And, that's where cops get irritated in these situations. And the ones who are just trying to do their job look bad because they're saying, hey, you need to shut up and just do this, or, someone like slaps the cop's hand. I've seen that before, and the cop pulls them out of their car. They're like, the cop has no right to do that. But once, like I said, once you just like slap a cop or touch a cop, you're going to go down because you just can't do that to police officers. It's not something that you can just go around and do. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm sending two messages here, in that what happened to Lloyd, Mr. Lloyd, was wrong, and there should be justice served, but at the same point in time, the police who are doing their job right need to get the respect that they deserve, because they're not abusing their power, they're just doing what they were taught, and they damn well weren't taught to discriminate of one person's skin color. So think what you want to think. I don't know. Is this a racist issue? Probably, I would guess. I mean, I don't know. Every time something like this happens, it's always a white police officer and a, African-American person. I'm not going to say male or female because I've seen both. And, it's one of those things where just because one stupid police officer does something stupid, that they're all like that. Heck, there's thousands of police officers out there. Just because 10% of them may have done something bad or something like this doesn't mean the other 90% are also like that. It's just everything gets stereotyped nowadays. YouTubers get stereotyped as, talentless lowlifes who, live in their parents' basement. I've gotten that a whole lot. I may be talentless, but I live in the upstairs of my house that I've lived in for 20 plus years, still with my parents. Just not in a basement like people make it out to be, because, my parents don't hate me. But, yeah, that's basically about it, guys. all I really have to say is take the situation and look at it from both perspectives and just realize that not all cops are like this, but in this situation, this should be one where everybody comes together, joins in, and just realize that something has to be done about this issue. I don't have anything else to say on this situation, and I know this may have gone on longer than I thought. Oh God, almost 16 minutes already, but it's one of those things where you gotta take care of a lot of things. You gotta, see it from each perspective and know that just because one idiot does something doesn't mean the rest are like that. So don't stereotype. That's basically where I'm also getting at in this video as well. But yeah, that's it, guys. Just stay safe out there. Know your boundaries, and to all the police officers that do their jobs right and correct, thank you for protecting the people that you are told to protect and not being, power-hungry idiots like the 4 police officers that have currently lost their job in Minnesota and will probably be on trial for murder very soon as the FBI is looking into this. Thank you so much, and yeah, that does it for me, guys. I'll catch you all in the next one.